morning, welcome back. This is our third video blog. I'm here with Dan and today we're going to talk about community interest companies.
How exciting, yes.
So, Dan knows a lot more about community interest companies than I do. So I'm going to be asking the questions and Dan's going to give us all the information we need and then we'll see how we get on. So Dan, obviously EPIC was your brainchild, you're the founder and you set it up and you set up the company as a community interest company. Do you want to just talk us through why you did that?
Yes, because I thought it was a good idea at the time. No, and I still think it's a good idea. So often organisations are set up as a legal entity within their own right. So typical limited companies. Limited companies have directors who are often shareholders. And what a limited company does, it gives protection and limited liability to those directors. So as long as they are trading their company legally and responsibly, if the worst comes to the worst, a company can be liquidated and it shouldn't personally affect those directors and shareholders, other than maybe a financial loss if they've invested heavy amounts of money into them. So what can also happen with limited companies is they can be sold, often for profit. Directors can come and go, shareholders can come and go, but they tend to be quite financially orientated. Where a community interest company is a legal entity in its own right. So the EPIC Family Community Interest Company is a form of limited company. It does have directors. However, we are not shareholders, and that's the way that I set it up. So we're limited by guarantee only, we're not limited by shares. So it means that we don't personally own the company. We can't be paid big bonuses out of it. So on a traditional limited company, directors can often be paid what's called dividends, which are a form of bonus. We can't be paid dividends because we don't own any shares. So that's kind of the very basics of it. So community interest companies have to be set up with the purpose of serving a particular community group. So our community group being vulnerable children and young people.
And what benefit is there to EPIC of it being a community interest group opposed to a limited company or a charity, for example?
It means that our profits have to stay within the company. So again, we can't just pay big dividends. We can't be sold. So there's something called an asset lock. So our assets within the company, so whether that's cash or physical things, whether it's buildings or equipment or whatever, are there for the purpose of our community, so our vulnerable children and young people. They can't just be transferred or sold willy-nilly.
And in terms of the difference between a community interest company and a charity?
That's a very good question. So, in an ideal world, we would have set up as a charity. However, it adds an extra layer of complication, really. So, as well as having to abide by the law and the rules of managing a company as a director, if you're a charity, you also have to abide by the rules and regs of the Charity Commission. So it adds another layer of reporting and it becomes really complicated. So I do have some experience of being involved in charities, one in particular, and it does add an additional layer of pressure. When you're just starting out, to set up a charity from scratch, when we're already looking to be regulated by Ofsted and dealing with quite a complex organisation and structure anyway, the last thing we needed to add into that mix was being a charity. However, what we could do later is we could convert to a charity. So when you are a community interest company or a CIC, you can convert to a charity. But what you can't do is you can't convert to a normal limited company. So once you've been set up as a CIC, we couldn't decide as directors that actually we want to convert to a traditional limited company and then be able to access dividends and funds or potentially sell it. And that's not how it works. So as a longer term strategy, I would envisage that we would become a charity. But in our early stages of setting up, it makes sense to just be a CIC for now.
And so what my understanding is that the emphasis of that is that actually all the profit goes back into the company and back into the children. And that's really important for both of us, isn't it, from an ethical and moral point of view, that actually, you know, we're not profiteering from vulnerable children in the community. So can you just talk us through how, obviously, we're not able to do this for free, we will need to be paid. So if we're not able to have dividends and shares, can you just explain to people how directors and staff and things are paid and how the company works from that point of view?
Yeah, so as employees, as directors, we can be paid. You can have voluntary directors as well. However, we both have mortgages. And unfortunately, at this time in our lives, we're not in a position to be able to do it for free.
No.
So our remuneration is based on our roles within the organisation. And so that we'll be paid like anybody else for the role that we do within the organisation. And that needs to be reasonable. So it needs to be a balanced approach. Yeah, I guess that's it really. But then charities also pay employees, so it's not really any different to how a charity would operate. In an ideal world, we'd all do work for free and do really good stuff, which I think in parts of our lives we do. I've done plenty of voluntary stuff. And
I think from an outside perspective looking in, you know, having people having a salary, it's predictable, as opposed to with dividends and shares and pulling profits out. You know, we'll be financially predicting with our salaries as well as all the other costs way in advance. So it's not like we're going to suddenly pull the money out at the end of year 1 or year 2 and then not really have anything moving forward. So hopefully that will reassure people as well that, you know, it is part of the financial planning moving forwards. So just going back to the community interest companies in general then, so is there any sort of restrictions or additional regulations that we would need to be aware of and work within as a community interest company?
We've got to do an extra annual report that a traditional limited company wouldn't do. So that report is, we've got to evidence that we are sticking within our purpose of why we were created and that we are serving the community we said we would serve. So we have to be seen to be evidencing that and documenting it annually. So other than the other kind of traditional styles of and responsibilities of being a director of a company, that's the only additional thing to make sure that I guess that we continue in our sense of purpose. So yes, there is an extra responsibility. Yeah, and then going back to the financial bit, the only other thing that we have done is to get going, I've put a director's loan into the company, so it's an interest-free loan. I've put a pot of money into the company to get going. I will want that back.
Really?
But yes, I will need that back. And I'll look to take that back as soon as is reasonably practical. But likewise, further down the line, if we have a project that needs another cash injection, directors can introduce funds into the organisation and then take them away again. And they technically could charge interest depending on that scenario. However, at this stage, the money that's funding and setting up, we're not charging any. Well, I'm not charging any interest on. But then the idea is that we get it going and then I have a job and we do positive things.
Perfect. And thank you for that. I think it's really interesting, and certainly people that I know have been asking about why it's a community interest company. So I think it's been really useful to help explain that to people. And the other question that I've had asked of me is how So we've got EPIC Family Community Interest Company, and then we're in the process of setting up EPIC Fostering, and about that interface between the two parts of the same business. So do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
So the Community Interest Company is called the EPIC Family CIC.
Yeah.
So that is the legal name of the organisation. Within our organisation, we can then have different strands of the business, so EPIC Fostering being one of them. But ultimately, EPIC Fostering is part of the EPIC Family CIC. But it's one pot, and if you think about it as one family, and you might have 6 people in that family. One member of that family is EPIC Fostering. Another member of the family could be EPIC Mentoring. Another could be EPIC, EPIC Support Services, EPIC whatever. So you're all in the same family, but the income is kind of one, and the expenditure is one pot and shared across the one entity. So.
And I think what we're looking to do, isn't it, is that each of those other sort of strands of EPIC Family will all be different strands of the company that ultimately are going to benefit the children that we're working with. So although, you know, sort of some of the funds from fostering might be going to advocacy or family time, you know, ultimately they will benefit that same child back again. So it's about keeping all that money in the pot for the vulnerable children.
Yes, and any projects within the EPIC family, so any brands that we create under that EPIC family, they all have to fit within our intentional purpose. So they have to benefit our end community.
And we've got lots of really exciting ideas, haven't we, of things that we'd like to do moving forwards. But obviously at the moment our focus is on the IFA and the fostering, because we're partway through the Ofsted registration for that, so that needs to take our priority, and once we've got that up and running, it will give us the opportunity to then start thinking about some of the other services that will fall in to support that. And that's why, you know, we do have, for example, the 2 Facebook pages. We've got the EPIC Fostering Facebook page, and then we've got the EPIC Family CIC. And you know, Dan's been working really hard to set up the beginnings of the website, haven't you, for example? So if you go onto our EPIC Family CIC website now, there's a landing page, there's some information. We're going to start putting some blogs on. Dan's put the first one on now with more information about the company and where it's come from, and we're hoping to start building on that going forwards. But one of the phrases that I really liked that I've seen that we're going to use on some of our stuff is that EPIC Fostering is powered by EPIC CIC, Family CIC, and I really like that because it's kind of the umbrella company, isn't it? It's the overarching company.
The EPIC Family is the organisation, and although the different strands, so EPIC Fostering will have some specific ways of working that's just, you know, for that. So some of the policies will be very fostering specific, but then on the other hand, some of the organisation's policies will kind of fit for all of it. It is all intertwined. Yes, and I've done this sort of thing before. I don't like to have something that's too easy. Yeah, and I mean, talking about those other aspects is, you know, there is work already going on with some of those other aspects. It's just we're trying to juggle a lot at the same time, and kind of have trying to prioritise the fostering service, but then we are aware that actually the fostering service needs some of the other stuff as well. So it's trying to get it all going at once with very limited time and resources at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But we will get there.
Yes.
We will get there, and it is going to be great when we get there.
Yes.
So is there anything else you wanted to talk about today, Dan?
No, I don't think so. I think we were just going to talk about what a CIC is, because lots of people have asked lots of questions. I had somebody talk to me at an event I went to before Christmas saying, oh, well, you'll just draw dividends. I said, well, I can't, because that's not how it's been set up. Oh, and you'll sell it. Well, I can't, because that's not how it's been set up. And it's been very intentionally set up in that way, because I've heard of people work for some amazing fostering services over the years that have said that they ended up leaving because the founders and owners retired. Then the service got sold. The service was bought by organisations that, you know, accountants or financial investors, and then the organisation, the culture changes, and it becomes very money orientated, and that's not what supporting vulnerable children and young people should be about. It should be about actually putting in what those kids need, not about what the balance sheet looks like. You know, the financial aspect is important, but not for some of the reasons why somebody would invest necessarily.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's important as well, isn't it, that, you know, we're quite localised. We're not aiming to be a big national fostering agency or anything like that. So, you know, we know what services and support are in the area. We know what it means to live in rural Devon as opposed to the middle of Birmingham city centre, for example. So we understand the sort of culture and what's happening, and that's really important as well, isn't it? But the not-for-profit bit, I think, is what's going to make us different to a lot of the other fostering agencies that are currently in the southwest.
Yeah, and we will stick to the southwest. So we haven't quite pinpointed the geography yet, but that will come over the next few weeks. But we are based dead in the centre. Our offices have, you know, are intentionally starting in Crediton because we are in the middle of what we foresee our patch being. And we don't intend to go national. No, it's not going to happen. Don't care what anybody says, it's not going to happen.
Become the biggest in the southwest, maybe, but not go national.
No, it needs to be realistic.
Yeah.
Yes. There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.